A quiet morning. Soft sunlight glints off the polished stone steps of the city courthouse where hundreds of people line up to enter. Some carry papers. Some whisper anxiously about cases, hearings, and deadlines. Among them stands a woman most people overlook. Her name is Clara Jenkins, 72 years old, dressed in a plain gray cardigan and soft walking shoes. Her cane taps lightly with each step. She looks like any gentle grandmother waiting her turn. No one realizes the storm about to unfold. Move aside, ma'am. This entrance isn't for you. The officer's tone cuts the calm air like glass. His gloved hand presses hard against Clara's shoulder, shoving her back. She stumbles. Her cane slips from her grasp, and the sharp crack of wood against marble echoes across the plaza. For a second, the world freezes. Phones lift. Murmurs ripple through the line. People hesitate, torn between fear and outrage. The second officer chuckles and nudges her cane away with the tip of his boot. Rules are rules, Grandma. This door's for official personnel. Clara steadies herself, her breathing shallow, but her eyes, steady and clear, hold years of quiet power. No one yet knows who she is. No one knows that this frail-looking woman spent half a century inside courtrooms, shaping the very laws these men are supposed to enforce. And in 10 minutes, she's scheduled to be sworn in as a state Supreme Court justice. But this morning, Clara didn't arrive as Justice Jenkins. She came as an ordinary citizen. She had told her driver, "I'll walk through the public entrance today. I want to see what people experience before they ever reach a courtroom." Her driver had frowned. "Are you sure, ma'am?" Clara had smiled. "Quite sure." Now that small decision has led to this confrontation, one that will echo far beyond these marble steps. "ID," the taller officer demands, his shadow stretching over her. Clara opens her purse slowly, her fingers stiff from arthritis. The officer snaps, "Did you hear me, old lady? Or are those ears just decoration?" Someone in line gasps softly. But no one moves. Clara feels pain pulse through her knee. She stands a little taller anyway. Her voice is calm. "Yes, officer." "I heard you. I'm simply trying to reach my identification," he scoffs. "Not fast enough." The second officer laughs. "She's probably here for social services." Their words bounce through the marble corridor like echoes of a time that refuses to die. Inside, Clara's resolve hardens. She's faced worse than this. Judges who doubted her, colleagues who dismissed her, juries who underestimated her. Every insult became fuel. Every obstacle a reason to keep pushing. She reaches for her wallet again, but her fingers tremble. It slips, spilling cards and papers across the floor. A young man in a crisp suit steps from the line. "Let me help you, ma'am." Before he can kneel, the taller officer barks, "Step back. We're handling this," but she just, "I said step back," the officer snaps. His hand drifts toward his holster, the silent threat loud enough for everyone to understand. The young man hesitates, then retreats, shame coloring his face. Clara bends slowly, gathering her things despite the ache that stabs her leg. The officers watch in silence. To them, she's just another nuisance delaying their morning. When she finally stands, her hand closes around a small plastic card. Her judicial identification. She lifts it carefully toward the officer. But before she can speak, his patience breaks. He slaps her shoulder again. The impact sends her sideways. Her palm hits the cold marble. Pain flares through her hip, but she refuses to fall. "That's enough," the officer says sharply. "This area is for authorized personnel, not lost seniors." The second officer kicks her cane farther away. "Maybe next time you'll listen." Gasps rise from the onlookers. The air feels heavy with disbelief. Clara steadies herself against the security desk. Her voice is steady. "I need my cane, please." "Leave immediately," the officer growls. "Before we arrest you for trespassing." She looks him in the eye. Her calm unnerves him more than anger ever could. "I'm not leaving. I have an appointment inside." His jaw tightens. "Ma'am, I'm done warning you." The tension hums in the air like an electric wire about to snap. A janitor nearby stops pushing his cleaning cart. Recognition flickers in his eyes. He glances at Clara and she gives him the faintest shake of her head. "Don't interfere," but he pulls out his phone anyway. As the officer grips her arm to drag her away, Clara's quiet voice cuts through the chaos. "You have no right to touch me." He leans close, sneering. "Lady, I have every right." In that moment, Clara makes a silent vow. She will not reveal her identity, not yet. She will let this scene play out not for revenge, but for truth. Because this is not about her alone. It's about every person who has ever been judged by appearance instead of dignity. Around the corner, the janitor whispers urgently into his phone. They're manhandling Judge Jenkins at the front entrance. Yes, that Judge Jenkins, the new Supreme Court Justice. You'd better get down here right now. Back at the entrance, the officer's grip tightens. Cameras lift higher. The crowd grows, and Clara Jenkins, standing in pain yet unbroken, prepares to teach a lesson the entire city will remember. The officer's grip tightens. Clara's arm aches under his hand, but she doesn't resist. The people watching can feel the tension, yet no one steps forward. Fear, that old and silent enforcer, keeps them frozen in place. Phones are recording now. Every second, every insult, every shove. The officer drags her toward the exit. You're leaving, ma'am, now. Clara's voice is steady. Remove your hand. Her tone carries a quiet authority that cuts through the noise. But the officer only smirks. I have every right, lady. Don't make this worse for yourself. He doesn't notice the janitor in the corner speaking urgently into his phone. Security, this is Frank from maintenance. They're roughing up Judge Jenkins at the front. Yes, the new one. She hasn't told them who she is. Please hurry. Inside the courthouse, alarms of a different kind ring. Word spreads fast. In a matter of moments, Chief Justice Reynolds storms out of his office, coat flaring behind him. They're doing what? He snaps. Get Security Chief Alvarez and meet me at the front doors now. Meanwhile, outside, Clara's resolve grows sharper. She feels the ache in her knee, the bruising grip on her arm. But more than pain, she feels purpose. 50 years of courtroom battles have trained her to recognize injustice in its purest form. This is it. You're hurting me, she says quietly. Then walk faster. The officer growls. The crowd murmurs, shifting uneasily. One woman in a blue blazer steps forward, trembling but brave. Officer, this isn't right. She hasn't done anything. Step back, the second officer barks, one hand on his taser. The woman freezes, her courage crumbling in the shadow of the weapon. Clara lifts her chin. Her voice carries, calm and deliberate. Every person here has the right to record police actions in public spaces. That right was affirmed in Glick v. Cunniff, First Circuit, 2011. The officer pauses. Confusion flashes across his face. You're not a lawyer, Grandma. Clara's eyes lock on his. No? Then you'd better hope I'm wrong. But she's not. And deep down he knows it. Inside the building, Reynolds strides down the hall, his deputy hurrying beside him. Do we tell them who she is? The deputy asks. Not yet, the Chief Justice replies. If she hasn't identified herself, there's a reason. But we'll stop this before it goes any further. Outside, Clara's calm words contrast with the officer's rising panic. He doesn't understand why her stillness rattles him. Why the crowd's silence feels heavier now. He yanks the handcuffs from his belt. That's it. You're under arrest for obstruction. The metal glints in the morning light. Clara doesn't move. Officer, she says softly, think carefully before you continue. Your actions will define your career from this moment forward. The officer hesitates just long enough for regret to flicker in his mind, but pride is a stronger force. The cuffs snap open. He grabs her wrists. A collective gasp rises from the crowd. The sound of metal closing echoes like a verdict. Badge number 4871, Clara says clearly. And your partner, badge number 5139. You are violating my civil rights under Section 42, Code 1983. His eyes widen. How did you... Before he can finish, the courthouse doors burst open. Chief Justice Reynolds appears, flanked by Security Chief Alvarez and two officers. They stop cold at the sight before them, Clara Jenkins. Half-cuffed, surrounded by stunned onlookers, and an officer gripping her arm. Officer Thompson. Alvarez's voice is sharp, controlled, deadly serious. Release her immediately. Thompson turns, startled. Sir, this woman... Now. The officer freezes, his confusion turning to horror as the truth crashes down. Reynolds steps forward, his voice carrying through the courtyard. That woman is Justice Clara Jenkins, newly appointed to the state Supreme Court. The silence that follows is deafening. Every camera phone catches the exact moment the officer's face drains of color. His hand trembles as he fumbles with the key. The cuffs fall open. Clara flexes her wrist, red marks bright against her skin. My cane, please, she says calmly. The second officer scrambles to retrieve it, tripping over himself in the process. When he hands it to her, he can't meet her eyes. Chief Justice Reynolds stands beside her, fury restrained only by protocol. "Justice Jenkins, I am deeply sorry," he says, "on behalf of this courthouse and the system that failed to recognize its own." Clara nods once, accepting her cane but not the apology. "This isn't about me," she replies. "It's about what our citizens endure every day when they walk through those doors." Her words hang in the air like judgment itself. The Chief Justice turns to the officers. "Badges and weapons now." One complies instantly. The other hesitates. Alvarez steps closer, his voice low but lethal. "That wasn't a request." As the crowd watches, the two officers surrender their badges. Cameras keep rolling. The moment is already history. But for Clara Jenkins, this isn't the end. It's the beginning of something far greater than any courtroom speech she's ever given. She turns to the people gathered. "You all saw what happened here today. Remember it. Not because of who I am, but because no one should need a title to be treated with respect." The words ripple outward like a wave, through the crowd, through the city, through the conscience of everyone watching, and far beyond the courthouse doors. The world is already listening. Within an hour, the courthouse buzzes like a hornet's nest. News outlets flood the plaza. Videos from bystanders spread across social media faster than anyone can contain them. Clips loop endlessly. The shove, the cane, the moment of recognition, and that frozen look on Officer Thompson's face when he realizes who she is. Across the city, televisions blare the headline, "Supreme Court Justice shoved by security officers outside courthouse." By the time Clara returns to her chambers, the governor has already called twice. Reporters crowd the steps, desperate for comment. She walks past them in silence, her cane striking a steady rhythm that silences the questions before they begin. In private, Chief Justice Reynolds meets her with visible guilt. "Justice Jenkins," he begins, "if you'd identified yourself," she cuts him off gently. Then they would have opened the door, smiled politely, and gone back to mistreating everyone else. "I needed to see it." He studies her face. "You succeeded. The whole country's seeing it now." That night, every channel replays the footage. Analysts debate. Protesters gather. Some demand the officers be fired immediately. Others talk about systemic rot. But Clara doesn't join the noise. She sits quietly in her living room, the glow of the TV flickering across her thoughtful expression. On the screen, a reporter's voice rises over the footage. Justice Jenkins declined to comment, but sources say she intends to address the issue in the coming days. What began as a morning misunderstanding may ignite the most significant police accountability reform in decades. She turns off the television and exhales slowly. It isn't satisfaction she feels, it's clarity. 3 days later, the disciplinary hearings begin. Thompson sits stiffly in front of the review board, his uniform neatly pressed, his pride unraveling beneath the cameras. "I was following procedure," he insists. She refused to comply. "How was I supposed to know who she was?" The chairwoman's voice stays calm. "Officer, the issue isn't that you didn't recognize Justice Jenkins. The issue is that you treated her as if recognition was the only reason she deserved respect." He has no answer. Reeves, his partner, enters next. He doesn't bring a representative. His voice is lower, heavier. "I take responsibility," he says. "I should have stopped him. I didn't. I thought it was harmless. I was wrong." Outside, a crowd gathers. Some carry signs that read, "Dignity for all." Others hold pictures of elderly citizens captioned with stories of similar encounters. The footage of Clara's ordeal has awakened something deep in people, a collective realization that respect shouldn't be selective. Inside, Clara testifies with the same calm composure she had on those courthouse steps. "This isn't about one bad officer," she says. "It's about a system that trains people to see authority first and humanity second." Her words spread beyond that room. City halls in neighboring states call for policy reviews. Civil rights groups file petitions for reform. Law schools request copies of her statement for ethics lectures. But Clara's focus remains sharp. She knows change built on outrage alone burns out fast. Real reform requires patience, persistence, and proof that dignity isn't just a slogan, it's structure. The next morning, she meets with the police chief and the mayor. The tension in the room is thick. They expect demands for punishment. Instead, she speaks softly. "You can fire officers every day and still change nothing. I'm interested in prevention, not vengeance, the chief frowns. What exactly are you proposing? A new kind of training, she replies. Not about control. About empathy. Every recruit should spend a day in the shoes of those they protect. Elderly citizens, people of color, those with disabilities. Respect isn't instinctive. It's learned. The mayor nods slowly. And oversight? Civilian involvement, Clara says firmly. Transparency, independent review, and real consequences. When she leaves the meeting, reporters swarm the sidewalk again. One calls out, "Justice Jenkins, do you think you'll ever forgive the officers?" She pauses, cane tapping once. Forgiveness is easy. Accountability is harder. That's where real justice begins. Her words lead every headline the next day. Over the following week, new details emerge. Internal Affairs uncovers a string of ignored complaints against Thompson, mostly from elderly and minority citizens. None were ever investigated. The revelations deepen public anger. Reeves cooperates fully, providing statements and apologizing publicly. "I failed that day," he tells a reporter, "but I'll spend the rest of my career proving that respect can be relearned." Thompson remains silent. But his silence can't stop what's coming. Clara convenes the first meeting of the Judicial Reform Commission. Around the table sit lawmakers, judges, police officials, and community leaders. She stands at the head of the room, her presence commanding. She presses play on a screen. The room fills with the footage of her encounter, raw and uncut. The shove, the kick, the disbelief of the crowd. When it ends, no one speaks. "This isn't about me," Clara says quietly. "It's about what this moment represents. How quickly dignity disappears when judgment takes its place. If this can happen to me, imagine what happens to those with no power at all." Her words settle into the silence like a verdict. Outside the courthouse that evening, someone has hung a handmade banner over the steps. It reads, "Justice belongs to everyone." Clara pauses beneath it, her reflection framed in the glass doors. She knows this fight won't end with apologies or policies. True change takes time, and she's waited her entire life to see it begin. As the city lights flicker on, she steps inside, ready to turn one moment of injustice into a movement that will reshape the meaning of respect itself. Weeks pass, but the echoes of that morning refuse to fade. Every evening news show still opens with the same question. Has justice truly changed, or did we just get lucky that the victim this time wore a title? Inside the courthouse, Clara Jenkins is no longer just a judge. She's become a symbol, a reminder that authority without empathy is just intimidation wearing a badge. Yet she carries herself the same way she always has, quiet but unshakable, refusing to bask in the attention. Across the city, reforms begin to take root. The police department issues new directives. Training manuals are rewritten. Every officer must now complete courses in empathy, de-escalation, and civil rights. At first, the old guard resists. "It's a waste of time," some grumble. "We already know how to do our jobs," but the new recruits listen differently. They've seen the videos. They've read Clara's words. They understand that this isn't just about rules. It's about respect. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs finishes its investigation. The findings are damning. Thompson's record shows 6 prior complaints of excessive force and verbal abuse, all ignored. The department has no choice but to act. A disciplinary hearing is scheduled, and this time the public will be watching. When the day arrives, the hearing room is packed. Cameras hum softly. Thompson sits alone at a wooden table, his once proud shoulders slumped. He doesn't wear his badge anymore. In its place is a hollow ache where certainty used to live. The chairwoman begins. "Officer Thompson, the evidence before us shows repeated misconduct unbecoming of your position. You've had opportunities to correct this behavior. You didn't. Do you have anything to say before this panel delivers its decision?" He hesitates, his mouth dry. "I thought I was enforcing order," he says weakly. "I thought firmness was respect." "Firmness without understanding," the chairwoman replies, "is just cruelty." After hours of testimony and footage replayed frame by frame, the verdict is unanimous. Termination effective immediately. Thompson's career, once built on authority, collapses beneath the weight of accountability. When he stands to leave, he finds Clara waiting in the hallway. She leans on her cane, her face unreadable. "Officer Thompson," she says softly. He stops, eyes downcast. "Justice Jenkins, I know sorry doesn't fix what I did. No, it doesn't, she replies. But growth begins where pride ends. What you do next matters more than what you've done. He nods, speechless. That evening, the press floods the steps again. When Clara faces them, she doesn't speak of punishment or victory. This is not about destroying careers, she says. It's about rebuilding trust. Justice must teach as much as it corrects. Her words travel far beyond the courthouse. News outlets run them beside headlines like, "A judge who refuses to seek revenge," and "The morning that changed policing forever." A month later, the first wave of Clara's reforms begins. Every courthouse installs clear signage reading, "Public entrances, all are welcome." Body cameras become standard for security personnel. Complaint systems are simplified and made public. A civilian oversight committee forms, chaired by citizens rather than officials. In training centers across the state, officers now watch the footage of that day not as shame, but as lesson. They study tone, posture, escalation. They listen to Clara's steady voice, her insistence that justice is not an institution, it's a behavior. Some roll their eyes. Others take notes. But a few, the quiet ones, the thoughtful ones, look deeply moved. Among them is Officer Reeves. He's been reinstated after completing retraining and community service. His face carries humility now, not arrogance. Standing before a class of recruits, he tells his story plainly. I was part of something I didn't stop. I thought silence kept me safe, but silence made me complicit. Don't make that mistake. His honesty earns more respect than any show of strength ever could. Meanwhile, Clara's work grows broader. She begins leading meetings with police leadership, educators, and city planners. Bias doesn't start with a badge, she tells them. It starts with habits. How we look at strangers, how we define danger. Her calm voice carries through every room she enters. In one session, a young officer raises his hand. Your Honor, do you think we can really change the culture? Clara smiles faintly. Cultures change when people do. Every person who chooses empathy instead of ego rewrites a small part of the system. That's how it starts. Outside the courthouse, murals begin to appear. Simple paintings of a gray-haired woman with a cane, standing firm before two officers. Below her image, the same words repeat again and again. Dignity is not a privilege. But for Clara, the story isn't about the murals or the headlines. Late at night, when the city quiets, she rereads letters sent by strangers. Some share gratitude. Others share pain. One, from an elderly man in another state, simply says, "You stood up so the rest of us don't have to keep falling." She folds the letter carefully, places it in a box on her desk, and whispers to herself, "We're just getting started. The reforms continue spreading." Within 6 months, 2 neighboring states adopt her model. National committees cite her work as a framework for justice-centered policing. Universities invite her to speak about ethics and humanity. Yet through it all, Clara remains grounded. She still walks to the courthouse through the same public entrance every morning, not as a symbol, but as a reminder. Each time she steps through those glass doors, she silently prays that no one will ever have to prove their worth, to be treated with decency again. One morning, she pauses at the entrance. A new officer holds the door open for an elderly visitor, offering a kind smile. Another gently helps someone with a walker through security. Clara watches them for a moment, her eyes soft. This is the change she wanted. Not applause, not headlines, behavior, humanity in action. She takes a slow breath, then steps inside. Her cane taps against the marble floor, echoing like the rhythm of progress. And though the fight isn't over, for the first time in a long while, she feels the scales of justice tip just a little closer toward balance. A year passes. The story that began with humiliation on marble steps has become something far larger. It's changed laws, rewritten procedures, and reshaped the soul of a city. But for Clara Jenkins, the work never truly ends. She moves slower now, her cane tapping with a steady rhythm that everyone in the courthouse recognizes. People greet her with warmth. Security guards, clerks, even young officers in training. Respect, once forced, now flows naturally. Today she stands backstage at the city's police academy, waiting to address the graduating class. Rows of fresh uniforms fill the hall, bright faces filled with hope and nerves. Clara adjusts her glasses, thinking of how far they've all come and how fragile progress can be. When she steps onto the stage, the room rises in silence. She begins softly, True authority doesn't come from the uniform you wear. It comes from the respect you give. Her words settle deep. Power without empathy weakens every badge, every courtroom, every institution meant to protect. Real strength lies in restraint. Justice lives in how you treat those who can do nothing for you. Cadets listen closely, knowing this isn't just ceremony. It's a lesson carved from lived experience. From the back row, one figure sits apart from the rest. Plain clothes, no badge, no rank. It takes Clara only a moment to recognize him. Daniel Thompson. He looks older, thinner, but different in a way that's deeper than appearance. When the ceremony ends, he stays seated until the crowd begins to thin. Then hesitantly, he approaches her. "Justice Jenkins," he says quietly. "I didn't think you'd want to see me again." She studies him for a long moment. "You're here. That's what matters. I volunteer now," he explains. "Community outreach at the senior center. They let me help with meals, transport, whatever they need." He gives a faint, embarrassed smile. "It's not a badge, but it feels like service again." Clara nods. "Service doesn't need a badge. It needs humility." He hesitates, searching for words. "I thought what you did, not pressing for punishment, was mercy. But I see now it was a test. A chance. It was both," she replies. Justice and mercy aren't opposites. They depend on each other. For the first time, he meets her eyes fully. "Thank you for giving me a chance to learn what I should have known all along." "Then use it," she says gently. "Every lesson wasted becomes another injustice." He nods, his voice low. "I will." As he walks away, she feels something shift inside her. Not forgiveness exactly, but completion. The circle closing. Outside, sunlight pours over the steps of the academy, bright and endless. Clara watches the cadets file out, laughing, adjusting their new hats. They represent everything she's fought for. Not perfection, but progress. Later that evening, she returns to the courthouse. The building glows under the city lights. A new plaque near the entrance catches her eye. It reads, "Justice Clara Jenkins Courthouse," dedicated to the principle that every person deserves dignity without exception. For a long time, she stands there, her hand resting on her cane, her reflection mingling with the engraved words. Through the glass doors, she sees officers greeting visitors warmly, guiding them through security, offering help instead of suspicion. The very scene that once broke her spirit now restores it. Inside her chambers, letters cover her desk, messages from citizens, officers, students. One from a young recruit reads, "I joined because of you. I want to make sure no one ever feels small under the badge I wear." She smiles softly, placing the letter beside the others. "That's the kind of judgment that matters," she murmurs. As night deepens, she looks out over the quiet city. The courthouse clock ticks steadily, the same rhythm as her cane. Somewhere across town, Daniel Thompson finishes his shift at the senior center. He helps an elderly man into a van, buckling the seatbelt carefully before stepping aside. When the man thanks him, Daniel shakes his head. "No," he says quietly. "Thank you." The next morning, Clara arrives at the courthouse again. The guards open the doors before she reaches them, but she waves them off. "No need," she says kindly. "I like opening it myself." She pushes the door with a firm hand and steps inside. The marble gleams, the air feels lighter. Justice, once distant and cold, now breathes with life again. She knows there will always be new battles, new reforms to fight for, new hearts to reach. But as she makes her way down the hall, she feels peace settle deep within her bones, because she's proven something lasting. That dignity once defended doesn't just change rules. It changes people. And long after her footsteps fade, that truth will keep echoing through every courthouse corridor, reminding the world that real justice begins not with power, but with respect. Months later, the nation still speaks her name. Journalists call her reforms the Jenkins Standard. Law schools teach her hearings as modern precedents. But for Clara, legacy is not the goal. It's the weight she carries carefully, one decision at a time. The story might have ended there, justice restored, lessons learned, but destiny rarely closes its own book so neatly. One gray morning, a familiar unease stirs through the courthouse halls. A case file lands on Clara's desk. Her clerk hesitates before setting it down. "It's from the Civil Rights Division," he says. "They've uncovered something connected to your incident last year." Clara opens the folder. Inside lie complaints from citizens across multiple counties, elderly, disabled, people of color, all describing similar mistreatment at courthouse entrances. Same tactics, same dismissive words, same fear. The difference is that no camera had been there for them. Her chest tightens. It was never about just one door, she whispers. It's the whole foundation. That afternoon, she summons the Judicial Reform Commission for an emergency session. Lawmakers, police chiefs, and advocates gather under the dome of the Capitol. Clara stands at the center, every word deliberate. We have made progress, she begins, but reform built on shame will fade. True change must be rooted in law, not reaction. She proposes something bold, a binding state mandate requiring every courthouse and government building to adopt her dignity protocols. Not as guidelines, but as enforceable rights. Every entry point would carry surveillance, independent oversight, and automatic review for incidents involving force or verbal misconduct. Civil penalties would apply directly to violations. The room buzzes with debate. Some praise her vision. Others bristle at its reach. A senator challenges her. Justice Jenkins, are you suggesting the courts police the police? Clara meets his gaze without flinching. No, I'm suggesting we remind them who they serve. The proposal passes committee by a single vote. Outside, reporters swarm her once again. Justice Jenkins, are you trying to rebuild the justice system from the ground up? She smiles faintly. Not rebuild, redefine. As the weeks roll forward, opposition grows fierce. Police unions campaign against her plan, calling it overreach. Editorials warn it will tie officers' hands. The noise grows until the legislature chambers overflow with tension. Protesters chant outside for hours, some for her, others against. The final vote approaches. Inside the chamber, Clara sits quietly in the gallery, listening as lawmakers argue. One by one, testimonies pour in. Elderly citizens recounting humiliation. Families sharing how fear keeps them from seeking justice. Each voice builds a wall of truth that no argument can tear down. Then, unexpectedly, another witness steps forward. Daniel Thompson. The room hushes. He takes the stand, his voice low but steady. I was one of those officers who failed to see people as people. I lost everything because of it, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. He looks directly at the lawmakers. Justice Jenkins's reforms didn't just save citizens. They saved me. They showed me who I was supposed to be. His words carry across the chamber like a confession and a prayer in one breath. When he steps down, the silence holds for a heartbeat. Then applause erupts from every corner. The bill passes. By evening, the state officially enacts the Jenkins Act, an unprecedented reform guaranteeing public dignity as a legal right. That night, Clara stands alone in her chambers, watching the city lights flicker below. The world outside hums with celebration, but she feels quiet satisfaction rather than triumph. She thinks of all the unseen faces who will now walk through courthouse doors without fear. Her clerk knocks softly. It passed unanimously in the final round, he says. The governor wants you to speak at the signing. Clara nods, her voice soft but certain. We'll let the people speak instead. They've waited long enough. The next morning, thousands gather at the courthouse steps where it all began. Sunlight breaks through gray clouds, painting the marble in gold. The governor signs the act with Clara beside him. Cameras flash. The crowd cheers. When the noise settles, Clara steps to the microphone. A year ago, I stood here as an ordinary woman denied dignity. Today, I stand here as a reminder that dignity is no one's gift to give. It's everyone's right to claim. Her voice grows stronger. This law isn't about me. It's about you. The mother bringing her child to court, the veteran fighting for benefits, the elder with a cane, the student filing paperwork. Every person deserves to walk through these doors without fear or prejudice. Applause builds like thunder. Clara's eyes glisten as she looks over the crowd. A sea of faces, all shapes and shades, united by belief rather than title. Among them, she spots Daniel near the back, clapping quietly, a humble smile on his face. Their eyes meet, and for a fleeting second, both understand the full circle of their story, how a moment of cruelty became the birth of reform. When the ceremony ends, Clara steps down from the stage. Her cane clicks softly on the marble that once echoed with scorn. Reporters swarm again, but she waves them aside.
I'm not the story, she says.
The people are. She walks toward the entrance, the same one she'd been shoved from a year before. The same door that once symbolized exclusion now bears a new inscription carved into the stone above. Justice welcomes everyone. Clara pauses beneath it, takes a steady breath, and smiles. At last, she whispers. We got it right. As she disappears into the courthouse, sunlight floods through the open doorway, and for the first time, the halls of justice feel truly open, alive with possibility, echoing not with orders or fear, but with the quiet footsteps of a world finally learning to respect its own humanity.